because they are attacking and attacking and attacking. What do you do when you attack?
You die.
You die. So they're going over the top. They get a trench, and that's called a success. So they got back to the original line at huge costs. There's no great tactical success in 1916. It's a disaster. They've tried many times. There's a particular ridge that's frustrating. The English attack it and the French attack it. Both times they fail.
Are you talking about Vimy Ridge?
Yes, I am. Okay, so the Germans are smart. Whose territory are they occupying? Belgian and French. And so what they've done, behind the lines in 1916, all the way through 1916, they're preparing fortifications, all the way, a huge set of fortifications, and what they do is they simply retreat. On one night they're there in the trenches, and the next night they retreat. And they retreat back to what's called...
They're preparing
well, the 1915 was all preparation. 1916 is those two battles I explained to you, Verdun and the Somme.
Yeah.
1917 comes along, the Germans had built these fortifications, and on the high ground, on the best area, the high area, overlooking flat, muddy, horrible area. So in other words, what have they done?
They've given themselves an advantage.
A huge advantage.
Have taken the best land in...
The northern land, they've basically put a little series of fortresses all the way along, and they retreated, and they purposely gave up land to occupy. It's called the Hindenburg Line.
Where were these fortresses?
It's basically roughly, how many men? 100, well, I'll just put it this way. 100 yards or more deep of barbed wire, concrete pillboxes. Pillboxes are,
No,
you know pillboxes?
I was asking
How far?
where the line, the
It's
fortress
in France still,
in France.
but it's a couple hundred kilometers, or 24 kilometers, I can't remember the distance.
Okay.
50 miles.
But it's in France.
So they shorten their supply line by 50 miles, and they devastate this area because they want to make it hard for the English and the French to supply their own people. Yeah.
And they just send the mortar on top of it.
It's like deep. It's called depth. It's defense in depth. So they
How deep?
purposefully make it difficult, relatively easy to get the first trench. Okay.
Oh, so it's kind of like false sense of security.
Yes.
Psychological warfare.
Exactly. So you get that first trench, but there's another series of trenches behind it that make it almost
So
impossible.
it's a series of trenches.
Because every
and
time you get that
fortresses?
one trench, right,
Yeah.
you're vulnerable to
It's
the...
kind of sad because they're basically sending in disposable men.
Exactly. That's exactly what the way I want to feel. Every time you're sending your men to attack, it's basically you're throwing them away. And you're making sure that you get a little territory for very high cost. And this is the nature of warfare right up until 1917. And 1917 is interesting because the Germans actually withdraw, they prepare defenses, and what their goal
Are the
is...
defenses the trenches? Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
The Hindenburg Line is a series of trenches and fortresses, and then what they do is they take most of their men and they attack Russia. And it works. They have-
What were they trying to accomplish?
Knock out Russia from the war,
Oh.
and it works.
Who's the
So
leader
1917
of this line?
Sorry, and who's the leader?
Could have been Stalin.
Who are we talking about? The German side?
No, Russia.
Russia.
No, Russia.
The Tsar. The Tsar put himself as commander. Totally. Dumb move. Okay?
Which was the same dumb move that Hitler made in World War II,
Yes.
overriding his generals.
Yep.
Power went to his head.
Now, the English are interesting because in third Battle of Ypres, it's called Passchendaele. They've massed all this troops. They're ready to attack.
Wait,
And
Mom,
they
can you
want-
stop singing?
What they try to do is they try to break through the German lines because they know the Russians.
They try to break
The
through
French
this.
aren't attacking because they're tired. They are dead tired after Verdun.
Why does it say spells?
Sorry? What's what? Okay. So the English make the third Battle of Ypres. It's Passchendaele. Remember what happened with the Germans and what happened with at Ypres was that it faltered because it's muddy ground and it still doesn't work. Well, guess what happens? It's the same thing that happens. Passchendaele, total disaster. But within the Battle of Passchendaele is an important little battle called Vimy Ridge. Okay? I'll explain that in a moment.
Why
But
do you spell passion?
this is Passchendaele. 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 It's actually on
Okay.
it's up there. But, so it's from June to December, and look what they get. Like there's no breakthrough. It's a disaster.
Vimy Ridge, June to December.
Vimy Ridge is not a disaster.
No,
Vimy Ridge is
yeah.
within, it's early, it is basically a week-long battle, but I'll explain
But
what
you're
that.
talking about Passchendaele right now.
Yes, but
Okay.
within Passchendaele is a battle called Vimy Ridge.
But Passchendaele was from June to December?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm gonna go back to this now. This one. Okay, so here we've talked about the Schlieffen Plan, that it fails, Marne 1, the Race to the Sea, Battle of the Atlantic, Ypres 1, 2, gas warfare, Verdun, Somme. Now, during 1916, the Germans try to break the line. It's called the Battle of Jutland. They take their best Navy ships and they attack. They try to entice the English Navy to attack, which they do, but the battle ends up at a stalemate. Now, more ships are
What battle
lost
was
on the
that?
English side. Jutland. The
But-
Germans try to, like Canadians don't participate in Jutland. It's where the Germans try to break the blockade.
Break the blockade.
But it fails to
of
break the
what?
blockade.
Naval
It defeats,
blockade.
it destroys more ships. Like the English lose more ships than the Germans, but the Germans don't break the blockade. And remember,
English Channel.
the English and the French are transporting troops and stuff from North America to them. The Germans get nothing. So the Germans are being blockaded from that supply route. And it's hurting them a lot. But the attempt to break it is Jutland, and it fails. Remember that Navy, the dreadnought ships, the special ships? Well, they defeat more English ships, so in a battle it's actually a win, but it's not a win, because they don't break the blockade. So now they have a question. The Germans, are they going to use submarine warfare? Do you use subs to try and end the blockade that way or not? And the answer from the German High Command is yes, we better use it. So in 1917, they retreat to the Germans retreat to the Hindenburg and try to knock out the Russians. And they start to use submarine warfare, which means every ship going to from North America to France or England is going to be attacked by subs.
But this is starting in
1917, it's unrestricted submarine warfare. Now this is partly what brings the United States into the war, because it starts to work. Whose ships are they knocking out?
The US ships that are.
U.S. supply ships, for example, Canadian supply ships. And in 1917, the middle of 1917, England has 1 month of supplies left, meaning they'll start to starve if they don't reopen it.
Wait, the subs are attacking.
The subs are attacking the supply ships
Yeah.
from North America to Europe. Yes.
That's where Canada tried to come in with like the Corvettes and stuff. Right?
Yes. So Canada, I'll explain what Canada's doing in a moment. So I want to get the whole war done, finished, and then talk about Canada, if that's okay. So the U.S. is in debt to whom now?
Why is the U.S. in debt?
The U.S. is in, well, let's put it this way. The debt is owed to them
Oh,
from
okay. From like England.
England and France, right? So are they going to declare war against the Germans? Or are they going to declare war against the English? Well, if they declare war against the English,
They're never
they're-
gonna get their money.
right.
They're
Or
in
if the
debt.
Germans win, what happens?
They're never
They're
They're never going to get the money back. So they're going to declare war as they're looking for an excuse. Actually, Woodrow Wilson's looking for an excuse, just like what happens in World War II. They needed an excuse. The excuse in 1917 is a ship called the Lusitania. It's a
Why are they in
passenger
debt?
ship. It's not. They're not in debt. It's that debt is owed to them. So English and French debt, they owe lots and lots of money to the Americans, and the Americans
Supplies.
need that money back because they're buying supplies. So submarine warfare, they attack a
You said
ship. It's a
Canada?
passenger
Canada
ship,
or Tony
but it's got weapons on it. The submarine,
USA does this?
the USA, the USA has this ship. It's a passenger ship, and the sub sinks it. A German sub sinks it, and it's in full public view. And now the Americans are really mad. And then they get a whole wind of what's called the Zimmermann telegram. It's this idiot diplomat, German diplomat, that says if Mexico attacks the U.S. now, Germany will give land from the Americans to the Mexicans. Now, the goal of this diplomatic
Wait,
adventure was to get the Mexicans to attack the United States so that they prevent war with the Germans.
who tried to do this?
The Zimmermann. Zimmermann is the diplomat in Mexico. Now the telegram is intercepted by the Mexicans and given to the Americans, and the Americans say, okay, well, I guess that's it. So they declare war on Germany.
Wait, Zimmerman is from Mexico.
He's a diplomat, German diplomat in
Oh,
Mexico.
okay.
And he sends a telegram to the leader of Mexico saying, if you attack the United States, will give you parts of the West, California, for example. You'll get California and Texas back.
That can explain a lot.
Attack
So the
states and you get.
The United States, because of these reasons, joins the war on the Allied side. And they send hundreds of thousands of troops, but they don't have 100,000 troops at the beginning. They have to train them and get them all set up and trained and weaponized and stuff like that. That gives the Germans time. But it's only a matter of time. Because they've finally knocked the Russians out of the war. Now who do they have to knock out the war?
Britain.
Britain and France. So,
Wait, the Germans
How is
have
Italy
to.
playing a part in this now?
Are we
Doesn't
gonna
Okay.
know
Getting
in
destroyed
terms
is
of
what
detail
I
the
know
Russians
they
or
do.
not?
very little.
Alright.
So all you need to know is that they're suffering huge casualties.
This is Russia.
So the Russians are losing big time. And they attack, and whenever they attack the Germans, they get annihilated.
Russia
They have
attacking
success
Germany.
with Austrians, but they generally, whenever they attack the Germans, it's a disaster. And basically what's happening is the Russians are literally dropping their weapons and running away because they can't handle it. So Germany says, you better surrender or else. And there's a Russian revolution. They blame the Tsar. The Tsar is actually arrested. There's a revolution, communist revolution. Communists take over. What actually happens is the Germans actually help the revolution go along. Lenin was in Germany. They transport him to Russia,
Are we
and then he
supposed
caused
to
the
know this?
revolution. So the communist revolution in Russia is in 1917,
Okay, one second.
and as a result, they signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and they're out of the war. Now, the Germans have all their troops.
Wait.
All their
Communist
troops.
Revolution in Russia in 1917.
Yep. And
What
they have
happened?
the Russian Revolution is 1917. So in 1916 and 1917 is the key year because the Russians are out of the war and the Americans are in the war. So the Germans have one last chance before the Americans sends their best troops there's just too many. And their allies are suffering too. Turkey's losing. Austria's having their typical disaster against everybody except for the Italians. They actually defeat the Italians because the Germans send some troop there to help them out. And they defeat the Italians at a place called Caporetto. Don't worry about it. So the Italians are losing big time against the Austrians and the Germans. The Turks are losing against the English and the Russians. But it doesn't matter because the most important thing is on the Western Front, right? So if Germany knocks France or England out of the war, they can sue for peace and that's it. The Americans
They
are out
can
of the deal.
sue for.
They can make peace happen.
Okay,
And
so
at their
Germany,
favor.
Germany wants.
Germany tries as one more chance to win the war, to make the French surrender. Okay?
One sec. Germany.
So this is it,
This is.
1918.
What is?
What happened
Cambrai?
to Vinny
Yeah.
Rich?
What happened to
So Cambrai is, okay, I forgot one thing. I told you the gas attack, and I told you that planes are being used, and I told you that other new technology. Well, finally in 1917, tanks. The English come up with an idea that what you do is you put a motor inside a shell of metal, and you put guns on it. What is it? A tank. And this is what eliminates the trench. So, but they don't realize this until the end of it's like the war's almost over. So these tanks, what actually happens is most of them break down or get blown up, hit by artillery. But surprise, oh my gosh, we can't hit it with machine guns. Machine guns are useless against the damn things. So they have to use all other means, and they do.
Busters.
Sorry?
Tank busters.
Yeah, eventually the Germans come up with a rifle, literally a rifle, that punches a hole through the tank. Yes.
Wasn't it like incredibly expensive to make? Like it's
Yes.
equivalent of like a jet plane now, like $30 million.
Yes.
but
Huge
that
expense,
time-
and the tanks largely fail on the ground, but they break through the trenches.
and
But
also-
why can't they exploit this?
Because they run out of fuel too quick.
Because of horse and buggy transportation system, remember?
And deploying them.
So
is
until
really
you
fast.
have mobile infantry and trucks and large numbers of trucks, mobile warfare is not going to work. The Germans are slow to adapt the tank, but they do. They do make their own tanks. But really what works in World War I is called stormtroopers.
Seriously?
Yes.
That's where the name came from.
So stormtroopers.
Oh
I'll get to
my
there
God.
in a sec. It's an idea came up about during Vimy Ridge. Now the Germans learned from the Canadians, and they use what's called stormtroopers. Operation Michael.
You said you're going over Vimy. You never went over Vimy Ridge.
I will. I wanted to do Vimy Ridge on its own,
Okay.
so I'll go back. It was a small part of the Battle of Passchendaele is all you need to know for now.
Okay. But are we supposed to know about whatever stormtroopers and are you gonna go over that?
Sort of.
later?
I'll do that now. I guess I can do that now, sure. Why not? I'll do Vimy Ridge. Are you guys okay with that? I can bounce a little bit?
Oh, my Franco's an artist.
Okay, Vimy Ridge.
Are we doing Vimage now?
Yeah.
What?
Wait 1 second. Let me just get
Stormtroopers, I'll get there and I'll show you what it is. Stormtroopers is this idea. Here is a strong point, there is a strong point, here's your weak point. They hold here, okay? They just engage them, but not seriously. They make them come and hold the They're in the same thing there. Where their main attack goes is where the defenses are weak. They bypass the strong points and surround them to attack later.
the main attack goes
So
where
the
defenses-
stormtroopers, it requires an awful lot of training and a lot of guts. But what happens is you avoid the strong points. So bunkers, massive machine gun bunkers, just simply bypassed. And if I'm in the behind, if I've captured the rear of your troops, now where are your machine guns aimed? The wrong way. Useless. Stormtroopers is a tactical effort that requires no extra technology. And the Canadians invented it. The other thing that Canadians invented was something called the creeping barrage. Both used at Vimy Ridge. The Germans learned from the Canadians.
Wait,
And they apply it en masse
what else did
when they're time
Canadians
comes.
call that?
You spelled
Creeping artillery.
Yes, passion. Oh yeah, AELE. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so the battles wiped out generation of young men, brothers, sisters, fathers, sons, and husbands, and etc. But really, what battle is this? Psalm 1916.
Do we have to know this for the test?
No.
Okay.
Oh god.
Yes.
This is Vimy Ridge. Okay.
I don't understand.
I'll explain that. I'll explain what this is. What you see is a plan. So the difference between the regular way of traditional World War I fighting, trench warfare, and attacking was, we're going to attack en masse against massed enemy, we're going to just throw the men out there. Well, Vimy Ridge, they planned it. They gave every officer a map and with a detailed orders. The idea of bite and hold, that means you identify a particular spot to attack, and you get that and you hold it, and that's it. You don't try to break through the enemy lines. There's no massive breakthrough. You just get what your objective is and hold it. So they practice it. They actually built a mock site, using the air plans, where all the enemy pillboxes are, and they plan meticulously. And they do what's called a creeping barrage. Creeping barrage is a very dangerous thing to do.
Stick your artillery on
You
top.
literally fire 50 yards ahead, half a football field, massive amounts of artillery
Wait.
moving forward.
Fire, so are you walking?
You're walking, and the artillery's going boom, boom, boom,
But
boom,
are you
ahead of your troops.
The idea being, what the British and the French did was they bombed the trench lines and then wait for the smoke to clear before rushing everyone. And that gives the Germans time to get their men back into machine gun
Yep.
nests. So
Wait,
creeping barrage eliminates the smoke clearing.
It-
So the Germans are all hiding
And
in
it keeps
bunkers.
they're hiding in their bunkers, waiting for the explosions to stop.
And then,
And
all of a
then by
sudden
the
they've got
time
men
they
rushing
get
in.
up there, the Canadians are right on them.
So, okay,
So the creeping barrage makes it so that they can actually.
Also risky.
so they're
It's
hiding.
very risky because what happens if you're slow or fast?
So they're
You get
If
hit
you're
by
hiding.
a-
slow, they'll get up and put their machine guns out.
If you're fast,
If you're
you get hit
fast,
by
you
it.
get hit by your own artillery.
The Canadians are hiding behind the smoke.
Which is why, yes, they're hiding behind the smoke,
But
but
the
also
smoke keeps
the
moving
bombs
forward.
themselves keep the Germans' heads down until the Canadians are right on top of them. Yes.
I can see that there's a lot of incentive for,
Yeah.
well, it seems that there's a lot of, the people who do survive World War I don't think any of them didn't have, like, any
Post-traumatic stress
sanity.
disorder.
Because I imagine tinnitus, which is like the ringing in the ears, is a huge epidemic after this for the people that survived.
Yeah, easily.
There probably was a lot of incentive to breed, because even then, like, the people that did survive, they were all like,
They're affected.
they're not really human anymore. They south them out stare, they
People who go through these kinds of events, literally, what they call themselves, they have two lives. Before the war and after. And two different lives. They purposely try to forget. That's why when you talk with soldiers, they tend not to talk about what they did.
Yeah.
They want to forget it. They block it out of their mind. So this is the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Notice the meticulous nature. So this is the Canadian Army. Notice they're all Canadian. Canadian Division, Canadian Division, Canadian Division, Canadian Division. 4 armies and a brigade. Brigade is a small group, not a division. And there's the Canadian Army, 4 divisions.
4
And they-
divisions of the Canadian Army.
It is called the Canadian Army, and it attacks as its own unit. Now, the French had tried and failed, the British had tried and failed, the Canadians did it. This is a Vimy Ridge, the Canadians,
There's no one else there?
no one else.
What did they do?
They captured Vimy Ridge. Vimy Ridge is like, remember I told you about the Hindenburg Line? It's fortresses, cannon emplacements, machine gun nests, and it's been occupied, it's the best land, and it's been occupied by the Germans from the beginning of the war. In 1917, as part of a larger battle called Passchendaele, April 17th, I believe, Canadians capture Vimy Ridge. How? Limited bite and hold tactics, creeping barrage, stormtroopers, planning, meticulous planning.
What is fight and war?
Bite and hold is where you, limited objectives, another way of putting it. You don't try to break through the enemy into enemy territory to try and win the war. You just simply get this hill. I want this hill. Get it.
So they aim small.
They aim small, and it's limited bite and hold tactics, and it works brilliantly. Now, it's not applied for the rest of the war, except by
German.
the Germans.
So
So what happens is, you can imagine the Canadian, Arthur Currie, in Passchendaele saying, please do this. Plan an attack, practice it, do limited bite and hold tactics, and of course, the English say, well, no, they're about to break, mass attack. Now you have the order, do you do it or not? Well, do you do the order of mass attack, or do you say, no, we got to train it and plan for it and do the limited bite and holds? Well, can you say no if you're in the army?
no.
No. So the Commander Haig and the head of the French and English army is basically saying, we have to do this. We're gonna lose the war if we don't attack. So attack. And so the Canadians go over the top and die. Passchendaele.
Passchendaele.
So these Canadians, the Canadian Army, this is the beginning of the Battle of beginning of Battle of Passchendaele. Vimy Ridge is occupied as part of the Battle of Passchendaele. But this is not something that the rest of the commanders all listen to, right? They don't take heed of this lesson and end up paying the price in huge amounts of blood.
Wasn't something the rest of the Allies?
The rest of the Allies do not see this as an example until 1918. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay?
But the
Guess
Germans
what this
weren't
is?
for it.
I've tried trench.
A German trench. What battle?
No idea.
Vimy Ridge.
Well, we're talking about this.
So
But the Germans learned from
this
the
is
Canadians.
Passchendaele. Mud and mud and mud and mud and mud and mud.
Who's taking all these pictures?
Oh, it's photography, right? So there's photography. There's Passchendaele. It's
Did
so
they die?
bad. This is Passchendaele. So it's so bad. Like there's no.
What are those posts?
Trees.
Those are trees.
Where are trees?
Why do they have like?
And it's so bad, you actually, to supply the army, have to lay down wooden planks so you don't sink. People drowned in the mud.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
This is Passchendaele before, Passchendaele after.
The people who take these photos are like war correspondents and people like that, right?
Yeah. Okay? Vimy Ridge.
Don't a lot of the reporters die just like they do now?
Oh, yeah, honestly.
I'd imagine a lot of them to be taken in for interrogation.
Yeah.
Okay. So 1917 Passchendaele. Now 1918 is the last year of the war. Before I get into that, I want to do how Germany tries to stop. End
Wait,
this
how
war.
Germany tries
How many
to-
Germany tries to stop, to end the war, to finally get victory. They use the stormtrooper tactics on a large scale. And for the first time since 1914, they get a breakthrough.
Wait, let me show you.
So Michael is the Operation Michael. Michael is the archangel. It's the sword of God, if you will. Okay, so that's why they choose Michael. And Michael fails. I'll explain three main reasons why. One,
Michael was the name of their
the
plan.
offensive, yes, like the Schlieffen Plan, Operation Michael,
This is a stormtrooper thing?
stormtrooper thing, and it works. They break through the French lines and they're into open country. But here's the problem: they've been starving themselves for 4 years, and then they go to the French countryside, and they go to the houses, and they go into the houses where they get wine, bread, sausage, cheese, little brie, and
And they
and
all make themselves
they
sick.
literally, yeah, they can't, they're so, they gorge themselves, and try and coordinate a heap of the elation of actually finally being able to eat, and finally being able, not being starving, leads in part to the reasons why they were caught unawares by the counterattack, which is called the Second Battle of the Marne. The other reason is because we're still dealing with what kind of supply? Horse and buggy supply systems. So they have to get like guns and other stuff transported over no man's land when they were successful into France, and the supply system just can't support the army. The third reason is because they didn't attack the Canadians. They left them alone. So-
What are these reasons for?
Sorry?
This is
You
why
said-
The
Mike
reason
fails.
why Michael fails.
Okay.
So Michael is basically against the French and some of the English army, but it's working. They're finally occupying large numbers of territory. And then the Black Day of the German army. Who spearheads the Black Day of the German army? The Canadians. And what they do is they attack. And they do an attack that hits them behind German lines. Now what do the Germans have to do? Retreat. And the Americans come into the war, and there are hundreds of thousands of men on the front lines. It's over. The general now starts listening to the Canadians, and he says, not just that, he adapts his own tactic, which is simply fight until resistance stiffens, and then stop attacking and attack somewhere else. So you'll see, it's called the Black Day for the German army, and 100 days.
This was the
After
Battle of
100 days,
Normandy.
the war will be over. Within that 100 days, Turkey and Austria are out of the war. The Kaiser's abdicated, and they've got a new government, and that government sues for peace. Now, what doesn't happen is not a single soldier of the Allies is occupying German territory at the end of the war. So the Germans surrender without actually having been fully defeated in the field. That'll be important, but we'll talk about
Wait,
that in a
one
second.
sec, let me just write this
Yeah.
down. But the three problems with Michael you said were that they were
Okay,
hungry.
They
the
were,
supply-
yeah, they gorged themselves. The supplies of France,
So they like made themselves sick?
in a sense, yes. Well, you know, they basically, they go into they're going to the French countryside. Soldiers go into, and there's a house. Okay, is there any defenders in the house? Wine. Ho ho ho.
So they get drunk.
Cheese. They get drunk. Discipline breaks down. You can't coordinate units anymore. And this happens all